What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I hold quite closely to my heart, okay? It's the problems with Australian weightlifting, okay? So I'm not here to talk about how bad the federation is or, just shit talk about them for the whole video. That's not the purpose. The purpose of this video is to give a point, okay? Explain the problem and then to offer solutions for how we can make that better for long-term progression in the sport of Australia, okay? So there's going to be many topics here. We're going to talk about funding, we're going to talk about anti-doping, we're going to talk about political things, we're going to talk about nepotism, all these different topics that I've experienced being at the highest level in the sport, and just my general feedback from someone who doesn't compete anymore and has a bit more perspective in this topic, and things that I feel need to be addressed in order to make the sport bigger and obviously growth in the future, okay? Because, if you say weightlifting can do it, why can't we? So I'm kind of just like sort of winging this video here, but I've got a bunch of points on my phone here that I have so I can kind of just have a reference point. So first thing that we're going to talk about is no funding, okay? So obviously most people know going into the Olympics, I paid for everything out of my own pocket. So it cost me around $25,000 just to go to the Olympic Games. Now to talk about funding, well, let's break it down. Let's go into a bit more detail, right? So there's funding allocated from the AIS, which is the Australian Institute of Sport. Now, athletes that are at a certain tier get funding yearly based on their athletic achievements, obviously at a world level. Now, in Olympic weightlifting, I'm probably referring to myself more here in this video, but I'll refer to other people too. But as a male, you need to be around top 10, even top 5 to even be considered for funding, which is not going to happen because obviously we'll talk about this topic later in the video. Lots of different reasons for that. But for myself, there was really no way I would be achieving any funding from the AIS because I'm just not ranked that high. I think the best I ever ranked in the world was 12th or 13th, okay? If you're not top 8, I guess, then there's really no reason for them to fund you, which is understandable because they want to see their money is going into an investment, right? And they're seeing results, okay? So if you're not in that sort of range, there's really no point. But breaking it down further, we have two main competitions for an athlete that competes in weightlifting for Australia: the Commonwealth Games and the Olympic Games. Now, Commonwealth Games is run by the CGA, which is the Commonwealth Games Association. They provide funding to athletes competing in the Commonwealth Games. Now, if you are in medal contention, meaning you are ranked highly in the Commonwealth, top 3, you do receive funding. It's not a lot, but you get some funding for your training in preparation for the Games. So for myself, going into the Commonwealth Games, I was getting $1,200 per month because I hit the elite grade standard from the Australian Weightlifting Federation standard set out, which gave me that funding from the CGA. Now, the CGA funding is given to the AWF. The AWF then distributes the fundings accordingly. Now, this was the highest amount of funding any athlete could get. No other athlete could get any more than this. It didn't matter if you were ranked 1 in the world, this was the most amount you could get. If you hit elite standard, that's what you got. Now, if you were world standard, I think, which is the one below it at the time, remember this is back in 2021, 2022, you'd get $1,000 a month. And then below that, you didn't get anything. So they were kind of the two standards you had to hit, which I felt was quite fair. Look, it's not the best money in the world, but if you calculate it, it's around $300 per week. It covers things like massage, covers things like your physio sessions, your recovery, nutrition, supplements, all that kind of stuff. It helps, So I was getting that leading up to the Commonwealth Games for about 13 months, which did help considerably. The problem with this is after the Commonwealth Games are done, even after achieving a medal, they drop this immediately. Actually, when we were at the Commonwealth Games, we all got an email from the AWF saying it was dropped. So there was no more funding. Now the CJ has finished, the Commonwealth Games is over. We then go on to the next cycle, which is the next 2 years, which is the Olympics. Okay, so this is the AOC, the Australian Olympic Committee. The Australian Olympic Committee provides funding to athletes going into the Olympics. Now they have a tiered funding, so they have podium ready, podium potential, and then sort of like I can't remember what it was. You can look it up, but it's on the AIS. There's a tiered amount of funding that's provided by athletes. So for myself, I think I was on podium potential, meaning there was a potential, but you had to be like top 8 or top 10, I think, to achieve that. So I was at that level, but I actually received 0 funding for the Olympics. Not 1 cent was given by the AIS or the AWF. Now, I paid half my way for the Olympics. So what I mean by that was Cuba was my first comp, Saudi Arabia was my second comp, and there was another competition, New Zealand, I paid for all my fees and stuff like that. So I paid for 3 competitions out of my own pocket. There were other competitions that were fully funded by the AWF, but I still had to pay the other stuff on my own. And this didn't include any extra funding. It was literally just, oh, you've made the team, we'll give you the funding for the flights, the accommodation, the food, all that stuff, as they should, because if you've made a world team, why should you have to pay that out of your own pocket? Anyways, there was no actual funding given to me for training. So funding is a massive issue as a weightlifter, an elite weightlifter in Australia. The only athlete that did get funding, there was only one in the Olympic cycle. You can guess there were 3 athletes in total. That athlete got everything, okay? All funding was given towards them. I don't know the exact amount, but it was higher than 50,000 Australian dollars. That was all given to them. Now, my issue with this is fairness, okay? Now, obviously this athlete's ranked higher than the other 2. We know that. But I feel that their funding should have been distributed, not equally, but it should have been distributed sort of based on the ability. I don't feel like you should have put all your eggs into one basket, which is what the Australian Weightlifting Federation did, gave all this funding to this athlete, and we got absolutely nothing. So that was a big issue, especially with the Olympics. So anyways, but on top of that, this other topic is funding for just training in general. Like as an athlete, training, your normal day-to-day expenses, sometimes injuries come, you got to pay for cortisones, you got to pay for sports doctor appointments, all that kind of stuff. There's no real support as an athlete in Australia. It's all under your own guard. You know, you can't email the federation, hey, I hurt my wrist, I need to get a scan, can you cover me? No, there's none of that. So it's really out of your own pocket. It's out of your own expenses as an athlete, which is a big issue incentive-wise to want to continue to compete at a high level when really you're probably not even cracking the top 8 or top 10 in the world. So incentive is a huge issue because funding is not prevalent enough. So I do think funding could be distributed a little bit more fairly. Do I think the best athlete in Australia should get the most funding? For sure. But do I think athletes who are behind them or working their way up should still be getting funding? Of course, okay, but this is not the case in Australian weightlifting. Only one person gets all the funding. That is a huge problem. So that's my main issue with funding in Australia. There's no real funding. So it's really hard for athletes to want to train and compete at a high level without funding. Second issue, drug testing, okay? Controversial one, I don't think so. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's really unfair, let's be real, we know that. As an athlete competing in Australia, we get drug tested routinely. Now, I counted the amount of times I got drug tested from the day I got announced on the Olympic team to the day I competed at the Olympic Games. I got tested 7 times in the space of 2.5 months, from June to the start of August. How crazy is that? 7 times. Well, you're an Olympic athlete, right? You get tested. I doubt other countries get tested that much, okay? And let's be honest, I'm going into the Olympics to just participate. I'm not going there to win, I'm just going there to participate. I'm hoping a few people can bomb out, I can get a better ranking. That's it. So I feel drug testing is a huge problem in Australia, which is like understandable. As an athlete, you compete, you know, you're in a first world country, you should be expected to get tested. The problem with drug testing is it creates an unlevel playing field, in my opinion. Guys, this is my opinion. I'm not here to debate with you, whatever. I'm not saying I'm pro drugs, everyone should take drugs, they're good for you. No, I'm just saying that drug testing, the actual process of an athlete getting anti-doping checked, getting tested like that, creates an unlevel playing field, because why should they be subject to strict anti-doping guidelines versus athletes who aren't, okay? That corruption, politics, all these types of things. The IWF, the International Weightlifting Federation, is not known for being the squeaky clean image we all think, right? We've heard things in the past. You can look these things up. They're available publicly on Google. The McLaren report, you can look that up. Basically a report that went through the whole bank statements of the IWF and found briberies and corruptions from multiple huge weightlifting nations. It's a known thing that anti-doping is a big problem, okay? But the problem is, as an Australian athlete, you are getting drug tested routinely and other countries are not. So that is a huge problem, anti-doping. On top of that, without the funding, which was the first part of the video, what is the incentive to want to get drug tested routinely at least twice a month out of competition, not get any support or funding from the sport, and you're just paying to get drug tested? I think it's really stupid, you know? So I think anti-doping is a huge problem. The risk of I'm doing this on my own, it's not state-funded doping, it's completely on the athlete's own accords if they want to dope, versus the reward. And the risk is you get popped, you're done for 4 years, right? You're out of the sport. Everyone looks down at you, you're a burden like that, versus the reward of you choose to dope, you get away with it, and you receive the rewards, you win an Olympic medal, for example. It doesn't happen in Australia, but I'm just giving you guys perspective, you can understand. But we're linking this back to the purpose of the video, is the problems with Australian weightlifting. Anti-doping is a huge problem. Why would an athlete subject themselves to be getting tested routinely and not get anything out of it? Yeah. So anti-doping is a big problem, and obviously it creates an unlevel playing field because Australian athletes, in my opinion, get tested more than many other world-class weightlifting nations. You're an athlete that gets banned in Australia, okay, your life is probably going to be ruined, right? You're not going to be able to train at registered gyms, you're not going to be able to associate with registered athletes, you're not going to be able to part of sport. You're basically exiled, right? Versus if you got banned in another country, maybe an Eastern Bloc type of country, no one really cares. You know, the perception of anti-doping is really different in West versus Eastern countries. So that presents a huge problem in Australian sport, yeah? So it's a tricky conversation. Again, I could make a whole video talking about this, but basically, if you get popped in Australia, your life's ruined, right? Versus an Eastern country, I think you can't just get on with it and move on. And also, there's support from the federation, yeah? If you're a banned athlete, they're still communicating with you, they're still talking to you, they're helping you get through the whole process. If you're a banned athlete in Australia, and I know this from personal experience, the federation doesn't give a shit about you. They won't talk to you. They think you're a devil, you know? They think you're the worst type of person in the world. So there's no support in that regard, which, you know, it's tricky because it's like if you've risked getting popped for your sport, you obviously care about your sport, right? But then the federation just thinks you're a dirty cheater when really the sport's corrupt, and everyone knows that a lot of athletes at a high level do dope. So it is a big problem. On to the next topic. Community, okay? So community in Australian weightlifting isn't the friendliest, in my opinion, or at least in my experience, okay? Bitching, people being two-faced, people stabbing you behind your back once you've left the room. There's so many reasons why you wouldn't want to be a part of weightlifting in Australia. You wouldn't really want to associate with other people, you know? I get it. It's a sport where the strongest person is the strongest person. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? You lift the most weight, you're the strongest person. But with that comes a lot of backlash, you know, accusation, not doing it clean. There's accusations that, you know, it's not just you're better than this person. No, I can't accept that. This person manipulated this person to get on this team. This person only got to coach this person because they knew this person or whatever. There's all these different things. I just feel like the community in Australian weightlifting is not tight. I don't feel like anyone really helps each other out. And if they do, it's surface level, it's groupies training with each other, like thinking that they're all mates when they're really not. When realistically, you're probably training with a group of weightlifters in Australia, and they probably look at you on Instagram and they're probably hoping for you to get an injury or fail, you know? I don't like it. I've never liked it. And yeah, I just feel like the community in Australian weightlifting sucks, you know? I don't feel like anyone generally cares about each other and wants to get around each other. People just want you to fail. At least this is my experience. Remember guys, this is my experience. This is me as an athlete going through the whole process, you know? And don't get me wrong, there's people out there that do want me to do well. There are people out there that do want others to succeed, but I'm talking more at the highest level. When you're at the top, you got a big target on your back. Everyone wants to shoot you down, you know? And yeah, it's really difficult. You know, for me personally, I don't care. I just stay in my own lane, I do my own thing. I don't really let the noise affect me, but I know for a lot of other athletes it can be a big deal, you know? So it's a huge problem. The community needs to be a bit better in Australian weightlifting. We need to start liking each other. Other reason, I'm just going to talk on this one briefly, is the costs, okay? It's not cheap to compete in weightlifting. Talking about my state, New South Wales, it's $225 to just register. On top of that, you got to pay for the competition, okay? And then on top of that, you got to pay for usually your gym membership, your coaching service. It's not cheap. It's very expensive. So, you know, competing in Australia is not cheap, and I get everything costs money, right? But I feel like there should be some subsidies or some grants or some things given to make the cost cheaper. Why is it only, you know, $90 in Queensland versus $225 in New South Wales? Like, that is a completely fair, valid point. So the cost of weightlifting is a little bit up in the air. You know, some states are like half the price, other states are more expensive than others, which doesn't really make sense. I feel like the AWF should probably just have every state paying the same amount to make it fair, and that will involve more, that will make people be more involved and have more inclusion in the sport. So, you know, the cost of training is expensive, and like I said, if there were cheaper memberships, then I'm sure businesses and clubs would offer cheaper memberships because they'll be having more people in the sport. Problem is, because it's so expensive, they need to have people, they need to charge more because there's such a small funnel of people wanting to come into the sport. So cost of being a registered athlete and competing is quite expensive. The school program. So weightlifting back in the 80s and 90s, even early 2000s, used to be put in schools. So it was a part of the school program, which brought in so many athletes wanting to compete, right? There's no school programs anymore in weightlifting. We need to get back into the schools. As soon as Australian weightlifting can somehow get back into the school system, that's going to promote so much more participation, more people in the sport. It's going to grow the sport like crazy. It's going to grow it exponentially. But we're not in schools. That we're not in the school system, okay? We used to be able to, but we're not anymore. And that's a huge problem, you know? Think of it like this. Let's look at a sport. Let's compare weightlifting to athletics, right? Little athletics. Obviously, a lot of kids do little athletics when they're younger like that. So why don't kids want to want to do weightlifting. Like if there was a program in schools and those clubs affiliated with the program, which I'm sure many clubs would hop on board, then we could literally have a competitive way of, we could be competitive with athletics, for example, even Swimming Australia. But the problem is we're not in the schools. So being in the schools is something that I feel needs to happen, again, to promote participation. And we definitely can do it. It's just trying to get in there and having people wanting to push for that. So having people that are, wanting to put their foot forward to get it out there and make it happen. I work in a lot of schools. I teach people doing weightlifting in high schools, also in primary schools like that. But I mean, I'm only one person. We need everyone to collectively want to have that goal and to work forward from there, which it starts from the federation putting in procedures for that to happen, hiring people in the federation to go out to schools to do programs to promote the sport. But we're not doing that right now. So getting into the schools is really important. Last point for today's video is politics, okay? So if you've been part of Australian weightlifting, I'm sure you're aware that there are just a teeny few issues politically, okay? Some people, a lot of people run the sport and think their way's the highway, don't want to take on board anyone else. If they don't like someone, then you're going to get booted. All these types of things happen. I've been through the ringer of politics. My partner's been through the ringer. My coach has been through the ringer. My coach got banned from the state for absolutely no reason. I had to literally get legal to help him reinstate as a coach because one person on New South Wales did not like him, not going to coach us. Ended up turning it around, but little things like that, the politics are just unnecessary, and the athletes shouldn't have to be involved with politics. I always tell people, if you're competing, you should just be focusing on your lifting. But with weightlifting in Australia, it seems to be the opposite. If you're at a high level, you are automatically involved in politics. There's always someone trying to make a problem for you. If you say something wrong on social media, you get caught up by the CEO of Australian weightlifting, and you got to explain yourself. I don't know. There's just politics. It's a big issue in the sport. Like obviously for athletes, but also for administrators. There's a lot of things going on that shouldn't be happening, but people don't want to address it because they're scared of losing their positions. Oh no, I won't be able to coach a team, or I won't be able to progress myself in AWF because of these political issues. It's a big problem. And like I said, I've experienced it firsthand. Even trying to qualify for the Olympics. I've had to go through some things politically. Not having my coach come on teams, having my competitors have their coaches go on teams. That's not fair, but just certain things that happen. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but politics are an issue, and it's not just in Australian weightlifting. There's politics in any sport. There's always going to be favoritism. There's always going to be some form of nepotism, but I feel like it should be limited to just sort of the administrators dealing with it like that and making it fair for the athlete. But unfortunately, I feel in Australian weightlifting, if you're at a high level, you are automatically brought into politics. I know some athletes who have been Olympic level that have literally had to pack up their bags, move their state, go to another state because it's been that bad politically. So politics are a huge issue. I do feel like it's getting a little bit better. Maybe I'll make a video in the future talking about my experiences with politics in Australian weightlifting and what I've had to go through. I think that'd be a cool video, but I'm not going to go into it now. But yeah, politics are a problem, and I hope one day that it can be addressed properly and it's not really an issue for athletes moving forward. So that's a wrap, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and subscribe as always. They're just a couple of the things that I've found are problematic in Australian weightlifting and what I feel needs to change in order to grow the sport. If you guys like this type of content, leave a comment down below and let me know. But again, I'm just talking about my experiences in the sport and things that I've gone through and things that I've seen, and just sharing it with you guys on a platform, and hopefully you guys all enjoy that type of content. Definitely be some more videos in the future talking more about specific topics within this video, whether it be anti-doping, political issues, talking about a wide variety of topics. So again, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. It means the world to me, and see you around.